Good evening and welcome to episode 132 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This episode is being recorded on a chilly Tuesday, October 8th, 2024 at 5:29 p.m. Just kidding, we just rolled over the 5:30 p.m., but we'll count it as 5:29 because why not? And boy oh boy, it's been a very busy time lately. And the weather has been very all over the place, but it's beautiful outside. We're getting, oh my gosh, you just see outside the leaves that are just lighting up the streets, lighting up the roads, beautiful oranges, yellows, greens. The fall is truly here. And some of these days have been quite warm. It's beautiful. You have the window down. You're wearing a t-shirt. It's fantastic. And then a day like this gets a little chilly out. You know, when the sun is halfway in the air, there's that crisp kind of chill that's sneaking up right behind it. You know, you have warm days and cool nights, but it's wonderful to get into bed at night with the cool kind of weather outside. You stay indoors, you get under the covers, get under the blankets, you have a book with you, or perhaps you're getting some writing done, or whatever it is you get done in bed. You know, the summer is fantastic, but you don't really kind of have that ability unless you're like a crazy person or whatever. If it's blazing hot out and your idea is to get under the covers, man, it's like, well, hey, that's your prerogative. As long as you like it, man, it's up to you. But this weather is just so great for that. And then we get into the wonderful winter and just a great time of the year. We're officially in the Halloween season. I know the last episode was on October 2nd, but here we are on the 8th. And now's the time to be catching up on all of your scary movies, on all of your novels. A beautiful time to look up recommendations. There's no shortage of quality lists out there, people talking about fantastic films that you got to see, and of course when you pop on a streaming service and there are recommendations there and people kind of pass along titles that may or may not be on your radar. It's a great time for sure. You know, it's not I'm not immediately attracted to horror films. I enjoy all kinds of films, but this year, but you know, when it gets to October time, everybody's kind of sharing a lot of the same kinds of horror films, different kinds. I love all kinds of horror films. They're fantastic. You know, some, are much more my taste than others. I prefer very much more subtle, quieter kinds of films. There, I've definitely seen some kind of big, mainstream horror kind of movies that are very loud and bombastic and are very in your face, and that works for some people, and it doesn't really work for me. But to each their own. That's why you want to get kind of your own opinions sort of curated, and get other people's opinions curated through you. And that I mean that getting other people's that you know, their perspective, their opinions, and not just a random voice online that's going to say, oh, this movie's the worst movie ever made, and oh, this movie's the best movie ever made. It's like, well, every movie is the best movie ever made. Every movie's the worst ever made. It's completely insanity. I got water here and I got coffee. That's wonderful. I do think there is something of a bit of a placebo effect in society when it comes to art, where if everyone is kind of universally dogging on, in this case, a film, they're dogging on a film, that I think people are more inclined to go, oh yeah, actually I don't like this film, or vice versa. If it's getting a big awards talk, oh, it's one of the best films you'll ever see in your life, and oh my gosh, you're right, this is one of the best films I've ever seen in my life. And the amount of films that come and go, it's funny how the ones that really kind of stay with you, and don't stay with you, it's completely antithetical to any sort of critical appraisal. And I think people often get too fixated on that of, oh, this movie got a high Rotten Tomatoes score, or this movie got a low Rotten Tomatoes score. I don't think any of that matters, man. I think ultimately you got to have to sort of separate yourself from any sort of expectation. If everyone is telling you before you watch a film, this is one of the best films you'll ever see, it's like, I wish you didn't tell me that, because now you put this idea in my head, so now I'm going to have it on, subconsciously, I'm going to have it on this kind of unrealistic sort of level. Or if you tell me it's one of the worst films I've ever seen, I'll be waiting, like, well, what's so bad about it? I think you just walk into a film, don't look at any kind of reviews or anything like that. That's what I'm talking about, like Megalopolis, like last week, man. It's a film that I've really been sitting on since I've seen it, and the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, man, I did really like that film. I thought there was a lot that really worked for me, and I thought it was a cool film. But if you go online, I'm sure you read, oh, this is the worst film of the year, it's the worst film of the 21st century, this is, and if people have that opinion, that's their right, that's their prerogative, that doesn't mean they're incorrect, but I do think that we are, with the contemporary kind of internet age where everyone can say just the craziest thing they want, we have a very kind of hyperbolic sort of reaction to not just films, but music, art, drawings, anything of the sort. Everybody is kind of quick to have the craziest opinion. Craziest meaning, just the fall in line. We have to take it to the extreme. Oh my god, this band, oh, they're horrible, the worst band I've ever seen in my life. Oh, this band, they're the best band ever. You don't like them, you don't know what you're talking about. It's all noise, man. It all just kind of filters through it. That's why you got to kind of just not look at any of that nonsense. If I have plenty of acquaintances who we disagree on many films, but I'm always interested in what they have to say because I have a context to their opinion, and I'm interested in what they are saying rather than some nameless person online or some faceless person online saying that it's the worst film I've ever seen in my life. If you like this film, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, all right, man, Alex, you're right. Alex, your opinion, but I'm not gonna take that too seriously. It's to each their own, I suppose. I got water here and I got coffee, and my throat is dry as a sun, man. It's wild as hell. Make sure you're staying hydrated. Even with the kind of cooler weather, it's very easy to kind of forget. I know it's been a couple times where I'm like, damn, man, I haven't had water in a little bit. I gotta get on that. Everything else, the cola is fine and all that, and beer is cool, but it's like, man, water is where it's at. That's key. When you get up in the morning, it's the first thing you want to have. Coffee is cool, and tea is cool, and that's all great, or whatever you want, but you have plenty of that delicious H2O, and that's going to keep you going all day, man. Also, make sure to eat as well. I forget myself sometimes to eat, but, you just got to make sure you're staying on top of being the best version of yourself, kind of physically and mentally, working through whatever you got to work on. If you got to eat more, you eat more. You got to eat less, you got to focus more, you focus more. Everything is a process, and ultimately, Rome wasn't built in a day, so you really kind of focus on working on yourself and improving yourself, and just being the person whom you choose to be, or you wish to be, I should say. But let me get another sip of this coffee right here. We'll do some more talking. So yeah, we're in the fall season. No shortage of wonderful films to kind of come across, genre films to look at curated lists. If you have Turner Classic Movies, I haven't even looked at what they're showing, but I guarantee they're probably showing some cool stuff. So, let's just for fun, let's just take a look at what they're even showing today. Because like I said, it's October 8th, so I'm sure they're probably showing some cool stuff tonight. Turner Classic Movies are always showing some very cool, unique stuff, and let's see what they got in the schedule for today. Maybe some films I can bring up to kind of keep in mind. Let's see here. What's playing right now at the time I'm recording this? Raintree County. I don't know what this is. They're not off to a good start. Land of the Mohicans, 1992. That ain't a horror film. Gone with One Part 1. Why only showing Part 1? What the hell? Well, we're not off to a great start with that, but let's jump to Friday. Let's play it on Friday. Here we go. Here we got some films for you. Poltergeist, The Haunting, Spirits of the Dead, Carnival of Souls, Count the Hours, Criminal Court, Justice Once, Lawyer. I know some of these aren't horror films, I'm just saying, though. But hey, of that list there, Carnival of Souls, there you go. You haven't seen it? That's a recommendation for you. 1962, public domain. There's plenty of crappy-looking copies out there. You got a nice criterion of it. Actually, I talked about that film more in depth on episode of an Acquaintances show. It was a lot of fun. And so yeah, there you go, Carnival of Souls. So just check back through Turner Classic Movies, check back through lists, see if like, oh, I heard this film is good. I never seen it. I got to check this one out. And they're not showing exclusively horror films, but I'm just looking here. Wonder if they're showing on Halloween. That'll be fun. On Halloween, what do they got? They got The Strangler, Night Must Fall, Return to Glennis Call, Dr. X, Mystery of the Wax Museum, 13 Women, Freaks, The Bat, The Wolfman, The Black Cat, Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Other, and Willard. A lot of short films, too. A lot of, like The Black Cat and Dracula. I mean, these say they're an hour and a half or so, but that's with the bumpers and like after and before. So I think The Black Cat is only like an hour or so. Dracula, I think, is like 70-some-odd minutes. Frankenstein is, these are short films. You can and watch, man. Freaks it's like these are you can get through a lot of these quickly, and it's great because then if you're like, oh, I haven't seen a lot of these Universal movies, I can probably watch a couple of them today, and because it's only about an hour or so, and also of course probably plenty of cinemas around that are probably doing some perhaps showings of some of these older films. So just keep an eye out, man. It's a wonderful, wonderful time of the year. It's a great time of the year. And actually, I'm seeing the sun kind of poke through the leaves right now. It's almost like they're hiding behind it, but kind of poking through to kind of say, hey, man, I'm here. Don't forget about me. And that's great. Thank you, sun. Thank you for all your hard work that you provide for us, your warmth, your shelter. So let's give it to the sun, everybody. That's great. That's really cool, man. Really cool. Speaking of really cool, man, let's talk about a real good film I watched recently from 1950. I just had the thing up right here. Bear with me for like 1948. I do apologize. 1948 film. Actually, speaking of which, I watched on Turner Classic Movies, and I think just got recently in the past year or so got a Blu-ray from Warner Archive Blu-ray, The Boy with Green Hair, directed by Joseph Losey. Starring, we got Robert Ryan in this. Who's the young boy? I want to make sure. We got Dean Stockwell in this, Richard Lyon. It's a solid anti-war film. I mean, I'm talking about films of recent memory that are from the perspective of a kid during a wartime. I was talking about Forbidden Games, or is it Forbidden Game? I apologize. I talked about that fairly recently, which has continuously been one of my favorite things I've watched. Not just this year, but gosh, in quite a while. What a brilliant film that really kind of took my breath away, and just how brilliant and how powerful it was. Reminded me very much, even when I talked about it, almost like a De Sica film in a way. In just the way that a lot of the darker elements are handled, the ending especially, the way that you've seen maybe some of De Sica's perhaps one of his biggest films. I compared that one to The Children Are Watching Us, and this one, The Boy with Green Hair, is definitely not as dark as Forbidden Games or The Children Are Watching Us, but it's a very good, heartfelt film as well. We have this kid who he's an orphan. There's a war going on. This is 48, so I think this took place during World War II. But anyways, he gets one day, his hair turns green, he becomes kind of an outcast in this town. People have their own ideas of what's going on. They're like, "Why do you got this green hair for? Cut it off." And it becomes almost a surreal kind of experience at times, where this young boy ends up finding himself amongst this group of young kids, and they're all kind of outsiders in their own way. They have this own pact on the outside of town, and he finds an alliance with them, or allegiance, I should say, and ultimately uses the green hair as something of a symbol of defiance in a way. There's a great sequence in the film where he's in class, and some of the other kids are kind of giving him some flack for it, and we watch it now, and people, they walk around with all different types of colored hairs and all that, green and pink and orange and all that, and we don't even think twice about it now. But for 1948, he's sticking out like a sore thumb, man. And he's in the class, and the teacher is going around. He's like, all right, man, well, how many of you guys got blonde hair? How many of you guys got brunette hair? How many of you guys got green hair? And of course, he's the only one that raises his hand at that. And she's saying, like, see, man, we're all, everyone, it's just a hair color, man. We all have our own, not everyone here's the same, man. And it's great. A film like this, or I think of a film like, I don't know, just like, Bigger Than Life from like 1958. These films that kind of deal with these heavier topics that don't divulge into melodrama when they very easily could, and I think that's why filmmakers like De Sica, or in this case Joseph Losey, or is it Lousy or Losey? I've always heard it both ways. I think it's Lousey, Losey. And actually, funnily enough, I got a copy of The Servant not too long ago. That'll be watched in due time. I've heard some good things about that film, but it's very easy to kind of fall into that, and that's why these filmmakers like that, I think, end up standing the test of time more, and I think why they can sort of appeal to I don't even want to say more generations, but I think when you have to tell the film I've criticized films of this before, even contemporary films, that when the filmmaker or the writer has to tell the message to the audience and let you know exactly what's going on, it can go both ways. It can become a hokey way. I think of something like The Violent Years by I think it was written by Ed Wood, and it's got this ridiculous dialogue. There's so many sequences in that film of just the judge kind of shaming these parents, of going like, you should have been paying more attention while you were interested in these material objects. Your girls were out there, they were causing problems, and now look what happened. Now they're going to jail, and you have to learn a lesson. You know, these are like lesson films, man. It's not quite an after-school special because it's a little bit sleazier than that. That was what, 1956 or 58. And you watch those and you go, okay, these are just so hokey and ridiculous that you can't help but laugh. But then there's some other films where they just have to repeatedly beat you over the head with the message and say, hey, audience, this is the message for you. Make sure you don't miss it. And like I said, I've seen contemporary films do that. And I mean brand new films do that, where it's just like, now, before you leave the auditorium, ladies, I mean, at that point, you might as well just have the character address the audience and go, hey, guys, before you leave the auditorium, let me tell you one thing. This is the message of our film, and just in case you don't misinterpret it, here is how we're going to explain it. And it's just like, my gosh, man, I'm not in fourth grade, man. I can appreciate some nuance and subtlety, and there are just some films that just do not have that, man. And it's just the most ridiculous thing. So that's why when you get a film like The Boy with Green Hair, which is, it's not like a dark film by any means like that, but it is dealing with these heavier kind of topics. You know, you have a great feel. You feel sad for the kid. He's isolated from this whole town, and even in the in where you get towards the end of the film, where his I forgot if it was it was Pat O'Brien or Robert Ryan, the one who's watching over him. I think it was Gramp, who really kind of is having his own kind of conflicted feelings about the hair. He's kind of being pressured by some of the people in the town to really kind of make a stand, either with them or against them, and sort of the more, not even necessarily the moral, but sort of the, I guess because, actually, I would guess you could say the moral kind of complications of that. And again, because the writing of this is strong, and actually, I don't mean to pause mid-sentence, I do apologize, but good lord, I gotta get a sip of this coffee, because my throat is as dry as the sand, man. It's like Dune going on in there, man, it's so dry. Holy moly. But there's no dialogue in the film. Good lord, water time, my gosh. Oh my gosh, it's wild, man. Completely wild. Yeah, man, you gotta try to be professional when you're doing this. You can't, you listen to the radio, you can't have somebody coughing in the microphone. That's just nonsense. But you're not gonna have a character in this. They're not gonna be talking to the audience, or telling themselves like, man, I'm conflicted about this point. I should do this, but my heart is telling me this. It's funny because, even great films kind of succumb to that. You think of, an example I always give, and I think many people do as well, is you have Psycho. You have this really excellently directed, well shot, well written film, and then you have this almost addendum where you feel like, and I've always questioned whether or not this was actually even intended for, originally intended, or if it was ever maybe they had to add it to address the general audience, of a character having to explain, well, you see, here's what happened, and with his mind was like this, and it's like, man, we don't need this, man. I remember there was, I won't name the film, there's a film that I saw this year, that I liked quite a bit, actually. I was like, man, this is a good film. It's got a lot of problems. Actually, it's got a lot of problems, let me tell you that. But I'm like, you know what? This is a good film, and this is a good ending right here. And then the film goes on for about another literal 10 minutes, where the characters then proceed to explain the film. And I'm not saying they literally explain, here's what you just watched, but they put it in this ridiculous metaphor that I went, oh my gosh, I think I am hallucinating right now, because I cannot sincerely believe that the writers thought we need to put this in the ending, as if I am a child, and as if this film was written for children, because I understand the point of the film, but now by explaining it, it's almost as if you think less of the audience. Well, you've enjoyed the film, but now here's the lesson of the film. You see what's going on? And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to throw up here. This is insanity. But The Boy with Green Hair, what a wonderful film this was. Like I said, 1948. I watched this on Turner Classic Films, or Turner Classic Movies. Why did I say Turner Classic Films? I don't even think that's a thing. It's got a light tone. It's an enjoyable film. A solidly performance by this actor, Dean Stockwell. Oh, it is Dean Stockwell. Okay, very cool, man. For some reason, I was getting him mixed up with a different actor. Yeah, Dean Stockwell. Of course, hey, talk about contemporary enough films. You got that. New kind of 4K restoration of Paris, Texas going around, and he's fantastic in Paris, Texas. He's just excellent in that film, the way he talks and talks sincerely to Harry Dean Stanton. So that's cool, man. I didn't even know that was him. That's real cool, man. Wow, it's funny when things happen live. I just want to make sure that's correct. I don't want to, credit the wrong actor for that. But no, it looks like, yeah, man, Dean Stockwell for that. So very cool, man. Very cool. Yeah, the boy with green hair. Check it out. It's cool stuff. It's a solid film, man. It was a pleasant surprise that I always knew that poster. I always knew the title. I was like, all right, what the hell is this gonna be? But it was solid, man. It was a solid film overall. And speaking of recent solid films, this is one that I don't even have any notes for, so I do apologize. I'm gonna probably be going off the cuff of my hair on this one, which I watched a little bit ago from 1982. I want to talk about the film Smithereens, directed by Susan Seidelman, who is probably most known for this, as well as Desperately Seeking Susan. And this is another really kind of great location film. A film of a character who is really just not a great person, not a bad person, but they're drifting through life. Susan Berman is playing this character Ren, and so it's 1982, and like I said that before, 1982, and she is really kind of drifting through New York at the time. It's very iconic, very kind of iconic 80s fashion, a lot of what's going on here, especially with a lot of people that she's hanging out with. If you watched a film now that was taking place in the 80s and you saw some of these people with this, some of these fashions, you'd be like, man, this is ridiculous. This is like almost a caricature of the 80s. I remember watching Modern Girls and feeling that way, because that film was, I forgot what year Modern Girls is. That's 1986. And the fashions in that film are so ridiculous and are so exaggerated that you would go, if it was made now, you would go, my gosh, truly it could not have been like this. But you watch it and there are great different costumes and fashions in that film. You have like the kind of new wave kids and the goth kind of kids, the preppy kind of kids, and you're like, wow, man, this is almost like a stereotype. But that film was so enjoyable that it's almost like fun to see like the fashions and all that. And here it's not as exaggerated, but it's definitely noticeable. And a lot of the haircuts too, because this girl Ren, she's involved in a lot of like this kind of punk world, kind of like punk music. She goes to like the club and like dances around and all that. They have like punk bands playing, and also it could almost even work as something of like a I don't really know how I want to put this without spoiling a different film, so perhaps I shouldn't even bring up this other film, because I was going to bring up another film that this could possibly relate to, but I think of that character not surviving in that film, and I don't want to say the name of that film, so let's just forget I even said anything about that. But yeah, it's these films where you have the characters really kind of wandering around the city, really kind of aimless. I mean, honestly, a good kind of double feature you could even do with this is a film I brought up many times in the show before, but has become one of my favorite films, which is Andy Milligan's wonderful 1972 tragic adult film, Fleshpot on 42nd Street, starring the criminally underappreciated Laura Cannon, who plays this character Dusty Cole, who is a prostitute. And she ends up, she's going from one guy to the next. And actually, funnily enough, speaking of Last House on the Left, you have Fred Lincoln from that film, and then you have him in this. And then Richard Towers, who plays Murray's father in Last House on the Left, plays Tony, the first person at the beginning of Fleshpot on 42nd Street. And it's such a sad, dark film, but it's also incredibly romantic, too. Everything with Harry Reams in that film and their relationship, I find to be so incredibly tender and romantic. It almost makes me emotional just thinking about it. But I've definitely talked about that film more in the past. And perhaps I'll even talk about it more in the future. Maybe it'll pop up on an episode of Peephole Pictures. Who knows, man? I gotta get that next episode out, so I'm not even gonna try to think that far ahead. But she is, bouncing around from guy to guy. There are some guys who are kind of interested in her early on in the film. There's a great kind of parallel to what will happen later, where a guy is kind of like I think it was a guy that she knows is like he's a guy she knows. I'm sorry, is like walking down the street with her and he's trying to get her attention. He's like, hey, what are you doing? You want to go here? Blah blah blah. You want to do this? Hey, what's this? And she's just not even. She's like he's not even there, man. She is a she doesn't really have a job. She's like, I mean, she says she's like promoting these bands. There's like punk bands, and she's handing out flyers and stuff. But I mean, you watch a character like this, and you gotta wonder, like, this isn't gonna last very long, man. It's a character who maybe doesn't want to kind of maybe doesn't never had the interest in, I don't even want to say growing up because that sounds kind of backhanded, because it's not even that she's a terrible person, but she's very misguided in a lot of her actions. She does a lot of actions in the film where it really kind of makes you scratch your head as to go, what brings a person to the situation. Even later on in the film, when she gets herself in a bit of an egregious situation where she does an actual criminal activity, you go, I don't hate this character, but you can see kind of what led them to this point. And as they're going along in this film, ultimately the idea that she the relationships in this film really all kind of shift. People are interested in her, she's interested in people, but ultimately they kind of drift away from one another, where when people kind of need her, she's not there, and then vice versa, and ultimately kind of the detrimental effects that has on it. This is by no means a nihilistic film, because I think there is a lot of enjoyment to be had in it, but I think there's a consistent tone in this that really is pitch perfect throughout. We're showing the harsh realities of kind of drifting around at this time while not reveling in it. I mean, by no means is this like something more darker, like maybe a documentary like Streetwise, which is a fantastic documentary as well. But that film as well, I think, was in Chicago. We were dealing with a bunch of these kids at the time, and things are just really not going well. It makes just a bad situation for a lot of them. You get the sense here that, like kind of Dusty and Fleshpot, she's not that far off from really kind of just hitting the gutter. And I say hitting the gutter in that she's really bouncing person to person, really kind of hanging on by a thread in a situation that really, if she could just get out or just kind of fix things at a point where she has this kind of maturity, then she really could kind of turn her life around. And ultimately, it's never too late to turn her life around, no matter how bad things get, no matter how dire things may seem. I think ultimately that there is good in everyone, and I think that people kind of have an ability to change and to be the best version of themselves. However long that takes, or whether or not that actually happens, ultimately ultimately up to them. It's their prerogative, whether they know it or not. So you watch a character like Ren in this, who goes through these situations, and you go, gosh, it's not that you're a bad person, you're just very misguided. You're just, you're treating some of these people, you can't fault some of the people in her life for being frustrated with her, the way that she's treating them, especially one of the characters in the film, a guy, I apologize, I don't know the actor's name, but he's fantastic. He does a great job in the film. But he has this van, he's talking about getting out, and she's kind of looking down on him for that. He really, kind of wants to get out of the city. He wants to go to like New Hampshire and all that. And she's really like, the idea of moving out of the city is like ridiculous. She's like, what is this, man? This is nonsense. Susan Seidelman is a really interesting filmmaker. I believe this is the only work of hers I've seen. I know that Desperately Seeking Susan is something of a big kind of film, and I know that she's done, bigger stuff. She's directed some episodes of like Sex and the City. She did the film She Devil from 1989. I think she did like some music videos and stuff for like Madonna, to my knowledge. To my knowledge, I believe this is her debut film, because this is 1982, and then Desperately Seeking Susan is 85. So a really kind of fascinating. It looks like, with a lot of her films kind of having that female protagonist, and truthfully, I don't really know much about how much insight into these kind of characters perhaps she sees herself in, or she feels kind of compelled to. But I do it kind of reminds me of another film, another really excellent film, one of my favorite discoveries of the past couple of years, which, like right when I discovered it, bam, gets Criterion right after. Or maybe it was right after we got a Criterion, one of the two. But Claudia Wells' 1978 film, Girlfriends, where you listen to a lot of interviews about that, and it's a really great kind of coming-of-age film about this woman, played by Melanie Mayer, and plays this character Susan, and her and her friend Anne, they have their own kind of friendship back and forth. But the fact that Anne is moving on with her life it was with this guy, and now Susan is kind of seemingly lost as well. You know, in New York as well. They do kind of pair together. That's not quite as downbeat as Smithereens. Not that Smithereens is downbeat, but in the context of both the films, I would say Girlfriends is definitely lighter. But you know, these female protagonists in their 20s who are feeling kind of misguided, feeling kind of lost in the city and all that. And I guess probably a more contemporary sort of example, a film that I'm not quite as a fan of, but I do think is interesting. It's probably Frances Ha by Noah Baumbach, which I would be interested to watch again. I'd seen it once. I remember it didn't really do much for me in the way that when I watched like Girlfriends or now Smithereens, that these films had more of an impact. Even though I'm not relating myself, I'm not a lady, I don't live in the city or anything like that. But I'm just saying I can be like, oh wow, I see a different kind of side to this. But anyways, I'm rambling on here, man. But some quality films. Oh, also Smithereens, that has a Criterion on. I watched it on Tubi. It's readily available. You can check it out. So check those films out, man. It's two different films, but you know, both kind of coming of age stories in a way. The Boy with Green Hair and Smithereens. And then, of course, also recommend Girlfriends and Modern Girls, Forbidden Games. It's a lot of good films here, man. It's Halloween season. Start carving those pumpkins. Make sure you're getting the candy for the trick-or-treaters. Set up some lights. Pop some popcorn. Throw on some scary movies, man. It's a wonderful time of the year. Get under the blankets, man. It ain't getting any warmer anytime soon. But, hey, man, unless you live in California or something. But, hey, man, you guys take care. Have a good one. I'll be back soon. And, man, just have a wonderful life, man. It's such a beautiful time to be alive. And take advantage of it. All right. Thank you guys so much. Here I am stuttering. Yeah. All right, bye.